now. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Henley College event on returning to college. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to join. Thank you everyone for taking the time to be with us this evening. We have a number of things to talk about. We'll be talking about returning to college and primarily the testing of students for COVID-19. And we will intersperse the evening with responses to questions. If you do have any questions that you'd like to ask us, please do put them in the chat. We can't promise to answer everything, but we will use the questions section to respond to themes of questions that have come up, and we do have the colleagues in the background that will try and answer questions as the evening goes on. I will then talk a little bit about the parental consultation session and the future one for the summer term that's up and coming, and my colleague Tristan will talk about the assessment information that's come through. We have Eamon, who will be talking about the questions, and in the background this evening Catherine from Student Services available via the chat if you've got any questions about student support. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our colleague Eric, who will talk about the lateral flow testing in the return to college. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Julian. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this, and take the time to come along. What I want to do is to start by putting the whole return to college back into some context. Just as we've seen the national position of infection rates coming down, the R number coming below 1, hospitalizations and deaths reducing, we've seen the same picture in the Thames Valley region. Particularly, and I'll talk about Oxfordshire because the college is based in Oxfordshire, and that's the group that I get involved with. The levels of infections for coronavirus have continued to decline across Oxfordshire, but the pace of decline, just as it is nationally, has slowed and plateaued. And in fact, around Oxford City, they've actually seen a slight increase in cases in the last week. And the levels of infections, although they've reduced, are still around the level that was last seen at the beginning of October in 2020. So not as low as they were back in the summer of last year, but certainly not as high as they were in April of last year, and certainly not as high as in December and January of this year. And in fact, if we look at the rates of positive cases that were reported to the college that we've recorded since last September, 42% of all student positive cases were reported from January onwards. So even though the college wasn't in operation, a large proportion of the positive cases came through, obviously from infection rates coming through December and January, through social, home and other connections within college. And so those rates have come down. They're still high compared to where we would want them to be, and it's that has driven a lot of the work in preparing to reopen for college. As the government had promised when they were talking about the roadmap to come back out, they gave us 2 weeks notice of the opening of college, and so we've been working since then and before to get things ready. And so when students come back to the college, they'll see lots of things are pretty much the same as they were before. 1 or 2 classes have moved to try and reduce congestion in the D5 building, but we'll still be using the hands, face and space processes of hand hygiene, face masks, and social distancing to try and reduce the rates of infections, because those are the 3 key things in the government messages and the 3 key ways to stop the virus spreading. Lateral flow testing is the process that the government looked to introduce at the beginning of January, but obviously stopped because of lockdown, but are bringing back in as we come back in from next week. But there have been slight changes to the way in which the government have asked testing to be done. Now the requirement for lateral flow testing is that students will be offered 3 tests and in college, and then will be able to do twice weekly home testing through home test kits, which the college will supply to students. I use the word offered because it is very clear in all of the guidance that testing is mandatory, is not mandatory. It is voluntary, and it is an individual choice that we will respect, whatever that choice is. But clearly, the more people who get involved in testing, the more we are able to try and stop the spread. The lateral flow test is designed to catch those individuals who are asymptomatic. They have the disease, the virus, but they're not aware of it because they don't show any signs and they have no visible symptoms. But they will still carry and can still infect others around the college or anywhere in the community. And so really it's a case of the more people who come to get tested, the more we can be happy and ensure that the environment of the college is a safe and healthy environment for staff and for students. Staff themselves are going through their testing processes from next week as well, but they will not be coming to the lateral flow test processes in college over the next 3 weeks. They're going straight to home testing, which is the process that has been done with primary schools since the middle of January. Now, people will say, well, would you do the testing? Why didn't we do the testing before college started? And quite clearly, our college population is widespread, and a lot of students have a long distance to get into college. And I had received communication from parents saying, we're not coming in just to get tested and nothing else. We made a decision in the college that we would ask students to come back to college in a phased return over the first week of the return. And you would have received the notification last week of which year groups and which groups will be coming in from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday of next week. And what we've done is decided that we will test in class groups. In that way, the students are going to be here in lesson anyway, and being in class groups, we just believe we'll get a greater take-up in terms of those who want to test. Now, in January, we did have a survey of students, and that survey, just on 90% of the students said they would be willing to participate in the testing process. Where that number has got to now, we don't know. We have no idea how many students will be willing to be tested, who want to be tested, nor how many do not want to be tested. But regardless of whether someone wants to be tested or not, college reopens on Monday and everyone is welcome back at the times that have been designated. And anyone who says they do not want to have a test, that is their decision and that will be respected, and there'll be nothing said to them about why you're not having the test. So it's a voluntary process, and Julian in a minute will be able to talk about the times and the classes and how that's been decided throughout the week. But the testing will take place in Rotherfield Hall, and it has been set out purely for that purpose, and will have a capacity of around 77-80 tests per hour that we will look to get throughout the day, Monday through to Friday, over the next 3 weeks, as we give the 3 tests options to students. And students will come along at their designated time to the Rotherfield Hall, and they will register with the college for the test, but they'll also be given a registration card which gives a direct registration to the NHS website, because every single test has to be registered with the NHS. As they do that registration, they go through into the hall. They'll find a booth where someone will be there to help them with the actual taking of the test, and it is the throat and nose swab test. and we will then process that test, and in 30 minutes we'll get a result. And based on the information that I've received from both Oxford University and Oxford Brookes, who've been doing lateral flow testing, they've done since Christmas, and in the last few weeks, somewhere around 6,000 to 10,000 tests, and they may have had 10 positives. So we're not anticipating a high level of positive test cases. But if someone does test positive, then we will find them within college, but they'll also have received a text message with their result. And if they have a positive test, then we will ask them to leave college immediately and return home and isolate for 10 days. What they will also need to do is to ask for a PCR test. This is the test that everyone has been getting. You get it through the post. It takes a couple of days for the results to come through. That's a confirming test that needs to be done. If that result is positive, then the 10-day isolation period continues. But if it's a negative result, then the student would be able to return to college the day after they get the PCR negative test result. Those students who test negative will get their text message on their mobile phone because they've registered that phone number, will be able to carry on in college. But it's not a case of them believing, well, that's it, whoopie-doo, I don't have coronavirus and I can just carry on as normal and start hugging friends and forgetting about social distancing. The message on the text message will be very clear, that says that it indicates that you do not have coronavirus, but it doesn't mean that you will not catch it. And so all the hand hygiene, face masks, social distancing requirements would still be necessary. As I said, testing is voluntary. There are some people, however, that we will not be able to test. There are some people who have had coronavirus, and if the student and indeed our members of staff who've had a positive coronavirus test in the last 90 days, they should not test at this moment in time. It's not that they've still got coronavirus, but there are still traces of the virus potentially within an individual, or the DNA of the virus is still within someone's system, and that could create a false positive result unnecessarily. So the guidance from the government is quite clear. If you've had a positive test result from the PCR process within 90 days, then do not go through the lateral flow testing until you come to the end of the 90-day process. And we will still have capacity to test on site even after the next 3 weeks in the run up to Easter. If a student wonders about how do I make the decision, there was the communication last week. Tomorrow we'll be sending out some more information about how to swab, but also we'll be sending out a consent form. And it's quite clear, and I want to make it very clear, that unless someone provides us, when they come for their first test, with a signed consent form, then we will not test them. Now, the government guidance is that anyone who is 16 years or over can make that decision to consent themselves. But what we are saying, and what the government have also said, is that we want students, given that they're 16 and can make this decision themselves, to still discuss testing with their parents before making an informed decision. But in the end, we will want them to bring their consent form with them on the first day of coming to testing at college. But with any form of consent, you can change your mind. You may consent for the first test and decide I don't want to come back again. Equally, what previous trials of lateral flow testing have shown is that there will be some people who initially say I don't want to be tested, who once they talk to their peers who've gone through the testing process, see what is happening, may then decide that they want to change their mind, and they are entitled to do so, and all they need to do is to ask for the consent form process, and we can provide that, and then they can go through that same process. The guidance from the government, the requirement from the government, as I said, is 3 tests on site. And then students will be issued with home test kits to undertake the test twice a week. And when they're on the twice a week process, tests should be they should do it no less than 3 to 5 days between the tests. So it would be getting into a system of, if you test on a Monday morning before you come to college, you then test on a Thursday morning. Or if you test on the Tuesday morning, you test on the Friday. But the home test kit is there. It takes about 10 minutes to set up. You still have the half hour to wait for the test result, but it then gives you the result, and you can then, if it's a negative, come into college. Within the instructions for the home test kits, there is also the instructions of how to record and notify people about the result. And for the home test kits, the link is there into the NHS system, and if you take a home test kit, there is a legal obligation to provide the test result, whether it is a positive test result, a negative test result, or even if it's a void one because the test just hasn't worked. What we also ask, and the government have also asked, is that whatever the test result is, you should still tell us, and there will be a form that will be available. There's a couple of questions that you'll be able to report your test results each time you do it into the college, so that just we keep carrying the record of testing, and we also know where people are at within the virus. How long will home testing be necessary? The government have not specified a time frame for how long home testing of students and staff will be. All I can say is that if we remember the announcement from the government and the roadmap that they have portrayed in terms of target dates for certain things to hopefully happen, June 21st is the date that the government have said this would be the earliest, but also is the date they would hope to be able to remove all social distancing restrictions. So I speculate, and it is only speculation, that we will be testing twice a week staff and students, at least some way through the summer term, and maybe to a half term, if not through as far as June 21. But obviously, as soon as we get any information about that, we will share that with students and parents. Thank you for your time. Julian. You're on mute, Julian.
Occupational hazard. Thank you very much, Eric. Just to pick up on some of the issues about testing on returning to college, we discussed at great length whether or not students should come into college prior to getting tests, as you heard from Eric, whether students should be tested upon arrival at college, and we felt that in terms of minimum disruption to students, and the simplest way of organising testing would be that students would attend their classes and then within 2 days of returning to college get a test, and they would be sent by class. So students attending classes, A-level year 1 class, A-level year 2 classes on Monday morning are more likely to get attested in blocks 1 and 2, and then the numbers of A-level students will diminish as the day goes on. So they should attend classes as normal, and when they are scheduled for going for a test, that is, they would get directed to go by their teacher. It will mean some disruption, but at least it will have a prompt of a teacher to remind a student to go and get a test, and there will be some regularity to it, so that students will be able to have a test on the same day at the same time. And I'm now going to hand over.
Sorry, Julian, just one point about that testing process, if I may.
Sure.
When the student goes to the testing stations up in Rotherfield Hall, we have got a group of staff volunteers. We've got some parental volunteers, but we're also bringing some additional staff in to operate and do all the processing of the testing that goes on. We've not asked teachers to get involved in that because we want the teachers to remain in class with those students who don't want to be tested, but also when the students have been tested and come back to the class to be with them. So we try and get as much teacher-facing time as possible. But everyone who's involved in testing of the students, from the registration process to assisting the student doing the test, to processing and recording the results, have all gone through training, and that's been verified before they come along to the process. And for those parents, if any are on the call, who've volunteered to help over the next 3 weeks, I just have to express my sincere thanks for assisting us in getting through this process. Thanks, Julian.
Thank you. I'm now going to hand you over to Eamon, who will talk through the themes of the questions that have come through.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you everyone for the questions you've submitted. They're coming through very quickly, and we're responding to questions as quickly as we can. If we haven't responded to your question yet, we'll try and get around to it as soon as possible. Three themes that have emerged in particular are around timetables, the idea of testing being optional, and when students will know when their test is. And to try and throw some light on those three questions, firstly about timetables, we're not planning any changes to timetables. The timetables remain the same as before the lockdown started, so students should continue with the same timetables they had as at the start of January. In terms of testing being optional, this is a matter of government guidance. The guidance is that schools and colleges offer tests to students who can take up the offer of the test. We strongly encourage all our students to take the test. Our aim is to embrace the process so that we can use the process to keep our staff and students safe. And a good tool in this work is to find out if the students, if anyone in the college community is carrying the virus, so that they can know to self-isolate, and so that all other people can come into college in the knowledge that they're sharing the college community with other people who are not carrying the virus. So we strongly encourage everyone to take the test, but the government guidance is that the test is optional. If students choose not to take the test, they're welcome into the classroom and into study. In terms of when students will know when it is their time to be tested or to have the offer of a test, the answer is that students will find out this information when they return to college, in their first lessons, when they will find out when they have an offer of the test, and they'll be guided to the test centre. And those are the three key themes that are emerging through the chat. And Julian, I'd like to hand back to you, please, to move on to our next subject.
Thank you very much, Eamon. I'm now going to talk about parents' evenings. We've got two parents' evenings coming up. The first one is in the week after next, on Tuesday, March the 16th, which will be for Year 2 and Level 2 students. It will be an online parents' evening using School Cloud software, and it will run between 5:30 and 8:30, and instructions will be sent out next week. The next parents' evening will be for Year 1 students. Currently, we have that slotted for the 27th of May, although we are reviewing when that date, whether that date will remain there or move, given the recent instructions that colleges have received for the assessment of students in their qualification year. And once we know what that date is, we will confirm that with parents. but that again was likely to be, well, will be an online school cloud event, and it will run for the same time. Now, for those of you who don't know what School Cloud is, it's an online platform that operates like this as an intermediary to run an event. Parents will be able to book their appointments, and I'll give you a quick run through of the screens in a moment. The meeting times will be 8 minutes with a 2-minute break between appointments. So a session will start at 6 and will finish at 8 minutes past 6. And then the next event, if you are scheduled for one, would be scheduled to start at 10 minutes past 6. We have discovered through using it that it operates best in Google Chrome. I have been using it on my phone as well, and it does work in Safari. But as soon as you do get in there and you're preparing for a meeting with a teacher, I beg your pardon, you do need to test the camera and make sure that the microphone works. We've certainly noticed that Google Chrome and Safari will prompt you to check that, but we can say without fear of contradiction, I think, that Edge will not run for this, so you would need to use one of those two platforms. There are no bells and whistles with it. As you can see, I've got a blurred background, but there are no blurred backgrounds or cat emojis or anything like that that you use with School Cloud. It is very simple and very basic to use. So in a letter, an email that parents will receive next week will be an invitation for a parents event on the 16th if you are the parent or ward of a second year or level 2 student, and it will give you the login details. So you will have a login code, you will need to confirm your email address and the date of birth for the student that you are logging in for, and then you log in and you will then see the parents' evenings that are available. You can see from when I got these screenshots, there was one that we were using to test, and the other one you can see there is the Year 2 and Level 2 Parents' Evening, which is currently scheduled to go live in 4 days. So you then click on the one that you want. If you can't attend, you can tell us why you can't attend. And then once you've selected the event, you can then choose whether you want the events or the meetings with teachers to be automatically or manually allocated. In this example, I'm going to choose manual, and you can see there are 3 teachers, all me in this event, and then you can uncheck them if you don't want to book an appointment with a particular teacher. Then you continue to book appointments and you will see a screen that looks like this, and the events that have the green rectangle with the square with the plus sign in it are the events that are available to book, and then you can just click on the ones that you want to book, and that is it. You probably need to save them on the bottom of the screen. You will see that there is confirmation that in this example the event had a 1-minute gap between the video appointments. They were shorter, but just to remind you, it will be an 8-minute appointment with a 2-minute gap between them. This is what it will look like. So once you get to this stage, you will be asked to confirm that Google Chrome can have permission to use your microphone and your camera. And this is in the test mode. You can test your microphone, and this is testing your camera. The only person that can currently see this is you. And then when you're ready, you can proceed to the call. And you will get a countdown to the first event and any subsequent event. And once the event starts, you will then click on a button like this to start the call. And then you will see something that looks like this. It won't be me pulling a face, but that would be the teacher and you would be the parent in the bottom right hand corner. You can see in the blue bar at the top, it gives you a countdown of the time remaining that in true TV style will give you a different colour when the time runs out. So it will go orange, and you can see here in this picture there are 13 seconds remaining. If you don't finish the conversation by that time, it will time out. And colleagues in other institutions that I have spoken with have confirmed that the shortness of the event concentrates the conversation that takes place. So I would urge parents to come to the point in order to get the maximum information out of the event, and that is the same advice that we have given to teachers. Just to take my face off the screen here, this is a screenshot from another school that will shows you that it can be used on a mobile device as well. So when you get the email, you should be able to use the link straight away to log into the site and book appointments if you need to. Having said that, I don't know, Eamon, whether there are any questions with regard to the parents' evenings.
Thanks, Julian. We've got 95 questions so far that we're still working our way through, and we're still trying to respond to questions about COVID-19 testing. I haven't come to any questions about the mechanics of the parents' evening so far, so there may be some, but could I suggest we move on to the next topic of grading?
Yeah,
and if there are any questions on parents' evening, we'll take them at the end.
Yeah, I'm just preparing the slide, which should come up here for me to share and start with Tristan. So I'm just waiting for it to load. Right, here we go.
There we go. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to be talking to you briefly about the government's proposals, or Ofqual's proposals, for how we proceed with grading this year. This essentially replaces the normal A-level process, as well as exam processes and some other types of courses. Julian, if we could have the next slide, please. Now, a really important point for me to make to start with is to explain the key difference between this year and last year. Last year, what we were asked to do was to give a grade that reflected what we thought a student would have achieved in normal circumstances. This time around, what we're being asked to do is to provide a grade that reflects the student's knowledge, skills, and understanding that they have demonstrated in terms of the content that has been covered. Now, that is a subtle but very significant difference, and I wanted to just highlight that at the very start. So where are we in this process? Well, the Department for Education and Ofqual have held a consultation process that took place through January and early February. That was then reviewed by both those organisations, and Gavin Williamson instructed Ofqual on what the general principles should be in the approach to assessment this year. Ofqual then, in turn, are now working with the exam boards on how to implement those general principles. So the important thing to say is that at this point, what we have is a set of general principles. What we don't have is the course level guidance from the exam boards. That is still to come. So there's some very important detailed information that we've yet to receive. And Ofqual actually currently consulting further. There are 2 consultations currently underway on the technical details of the awarding framework. So I just wanted to make that clear that there is further information yet to come at course level. Julian, thank you. So in terms of what we know so far in terms of the principles, in summary, these are the key items in front of you now. And what teachers are asked to do is to assess students' performance only in terms of taught content. And by taught, they mean both stuff that's been delivered face-to-face and remotely delivered content. So the grade that's awarded can only be based on what has been taught. That's a really important first point. Secondly, the evidence that can be used to support that grade can be taken from throughout a student's course. So originally, Ofqual were kind of heading towards the idea of a window, as it were, but they've set that aside, and instead the evidence can be collected from across the course. But what is important is that that evidence represents a broad range. And the precise specifications as to the different types of evidence at a subject level, that's the key information that the exam boards will be providing us with in due course. Now, teachers are asked to continue teaching for as long as is possible, and to award the grades as late as is practical. And we will share with you our proposed timeline in that respect shortly. But the actual, when you break down what needs to be done in terms of quality assurance processes, the available time is shorter than you might think, even though the final grades only have to be uploaded to the exam boards on the 18th of June. But I'll explain more about that in a moment. Non-examined assessment or coursework it is marked by teachers that will form part of the overarching grade. So where subjects do include coursework must form part of that range of evidence. And exam boards will provide a package of support materials in due course. That package will include sample question papers and mark schemes that we can use as part of the range of evidence if we wish to, but also some more precise guidance on marking and grading. So we expect, for example, guidance on grade boundaries and things like that. Julian, if you could give me the next slide. This is a graphical representation of Ofqual's approach. This is something that they've produced, an infographic. You can find it on their website, but we will share these materials as well. And it's quite a nice visual summary of how the process works. You will notice that in this infographic, Ofqual are committing themselves to a results day for A level on the 10th of August and for GCSE on the 12th of August. In their actual documentation, however, they simply talk in terms of the week commencing the 10th of August as being a possible week, but they're specifying those particular dates in this infographic, for example. Julian, next slide, please. Now, one key question that has yet to be completely answered is what can teachers tell students? There is a results day on which that final result is to be released, and Ofqual are keen that teachers talk through with students what the range of evidence is that will be used. That range of evidence needs to be consistent across the students. So it has to be the same range of evidence for those students in that class. But teachers should be discussing that range of evidence with students once that's properly finalised, and they should be providing marks on those component parts and feedback on those component parts. So a student will know what the different pieces of evidence are that are going to be taken into consideration, and they will know what their marks are for those individual pieces of work. However, what the teacher cannot discuss is the overall grade. So this proposal is currently in consultation with the exam boards, but Ofqual basically saying that if the teacher discloses the final overall grade, then it would be a malpractice issue. So to break that down, what it essentially means is the thing the teacher can't really discuss is how the different parts are weighed up against each other coming to the overarching final result. So students will have a sense of the territory, but they won't know the precise grade or the precise weighting as to how the range of evidence is brought together. I hope I've expressed that clearly enough. Julian, next slide. Now, the appeals process is clearly, an important thing to bear in mind. This is what has been outlined, so there'll be more detail forthcoming in due course. But the principles are that if a student believes that their grade is wrong once they've received that final grade, and it would be the 10th of August, they would be able to ask the centre to check that there have been any errors in process. So note that's a process-based approach. If once that's complete, if the student still believes that the grade is wrong, then they can request that the centre, the exam centre, namely us as a college, submit an appeal on their behalf to the exam board, and then the exam board can look at the process and sample potentially the evidence on which the grade itself is determined. I should say at this point that in the quality assurance processes that will be occurring even before the final grades are submitted, so the exam boards will be working with us over the course of May and June to look at our own internal quality processes, and they'll actually be sampling evidence at that point as well. So by the time we reach the results, the evidence should have been looked at very carefully, the process is looked at very carefully by the various exam boards that we work with already, just as an offer of, it's an important point of reassurance as to how this all works. So I'm going to share with you now what our provisional timeline is for this process. Julian, thank you very much. So we would, what we are proposing is that by Friday the 19th of March, each course has decided on the provisional range of evidence that will be used to construct the grade. Now, I use the word provisional there because, as I've explained before, there is further information still to come from the exam boards and further guidance, and it may be that we don't have all of that by the 19th of March. So that may have to be changed, slightly tweaked and adjusted in the light of any further information that comes after the 19th of March. But I think we can make a pretty good stab at that, and with a pretty good sense of what would be appropriate evidence to utilise in building up that grade. We would like our teachers to submit their final teacher assessed grades by Friday the 14th of May. So the middle of May may sound quite soon, but as you can see, what then needs to happen is quite complex. So once the grades have been submitted by teachers, and there'll have been internal moderation within the course, teachers marking one another's work, for example. Once they've been submitted, we will then need to conduct a head of censor review. The principal herself will have to sign off on the awarded grades for every subject, so she will need to be reviewing and sampling and looking at everything subject by subject. And we're also required to work with the exam boards as well, and there'll be external moderation, external sampling taking place. So we need a decent bit of time to do that. And so in our provisional timeline, we've allocated 2 weeks for that quality assurance process to take place before the May half term. And then upon return of the May half term, the exams office will be checking and uploading the grades. We know from last year quite how complex and long this is, inputting all of the data onto different exam boards, you require information in different formats, and we need to be able to check and double check and make sure that that is all correct as it's being uploaded. So we're allocating a 2-week period for that. So you can see why we've arrived at the 14th of May as the point at which teacher grades need to be submitted, so that we can allow for those processes to occur. The results day then would be on the 10th, and the appeals process would open at that point. We will share more information with you as we are in possession of that. Obviously, what is key is the course level exam board guidance, which we hope to receive over the course of March. But that should give you a sense of the overall direction and the general principles in place. I'll hand back now to Julian and Eamon to review the questions.
Thank you very much, Tristan. I'm just getting my screen to update. Eamon, are you able to give an overview of any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Julian. The questions remain about the COVID testing, and the two additional themes that have really cropped up are about the consent form and when will the consent form be sent out, and the answer is tomorrow. We'll be sending out an update to students and parents tomorrow, and we'll attach a copy of the consent form to the email. The form will be available at college as well, but it would help enormously if you could prepare a signed copy of the consent form. The second question of how can students get home if they are test positive? The first thing is that we are not expecting to see a large number of positive tests, but where they do occur, our first step will be to call home and let parents know, and we will ask parents if they are able to collect their son or daughter. Where that's not possible, then the college will look into making travel arrangements for the student to go home. And in our work, or the work Eric has done with Oxfordshire County Council, we understand that the council have a service for transporting people who have been tested positive, but accessing the service would take some time, and so we would ask the student to self-isolate in the college, where we have prepared facilities for people to self-isolate if necessary whilst waiting for transport. But I hope you can understand that accessing the service would take time, and if parents are able to assist on this occasion by collecting their son or daughter, that would be the best thing for your son or daughter if it was practical. They are the two main themes that have cropped up, additional to the ones we had been already talking about. I'd like to let everyone know that we'll continue to go through the questions, and we'll continue to try and answer all questions, and where we're not able to respond in a timely manner now, because we do have 170 questions, I'm afraid, that we will look through them and try to put in information into the email going out tomorrow that will respond to any questions that we've not been able to respond to during the event tonight. Thank you, Julian. Could I hand back to you, please?
Thank you very much, Eamon. I've just got I just noticed in the question in the chat some questions about the consultation session. Can You can attend with your son, daughter or ward, that's up to you. Ordinarily on a parents' evening, we do get some parents that come on their own and some that come with their sons, daughters and wards. There was a query about the length, 8 minutes. I appreciate that it is not as long as we might want it to be, but it does enable more parents to meet teachers. And in that regard, for vocational parents of students on extended diplomas, you may have an opportunity to meet with all the teachers in your son, daughter ward's course. If you could try as much as possible to refrain from that, to allow as many parents as possible to meet with teachers on the evening, that would be very helpful. And we also are going to be monitoring how many parents are wanting to book appointments that might not be available to do so. And if we need to, we will run another event. It won't be on an evening, but it will be on an afternoon, so that more parents can talk to their son, daughter wards teachers. We are anticipating that it will go live either on the 9th or the 10th of March, and it will be live prior to the information being sent out. Now, A-level Year 2 parents will get a current grade, a current working at grade and a previous working at grade with some comments on performance. They're very short comments, but they list what's going well and areas to continue working on, and that will come out. And for students on vocational courses, we would refer parents to the portal to look at the learning outcomes that have been completed so far on units that are being delivered, which is available there, and that will give a more accurate picture of the progress of students on the completion of units. Now, that might be fragmentary given the nature of vocational courses that are practical. And I certainly know that colleagues delivering vocational courses are anxious for students to come into college as soon as possible and undertake practical activities to complete units. I did also see a question in the chat box about how vocational courses sit within the assessment framework that Tristan was talking about. The Ofqual guidance states that individual examination boards will have a different set of rules and guidance for the completion of their courses. The overwhelming majority of students on extended diplomas at the Henley College are with Pearson, and they have issued a similar framework for the running of their assessments. They are going through with their standards verification process, which means that we have to submit evidence of completed units of work to the examination board for them to assess that they're up to a standard. And once that process is complete, we are then released as a centre to complete uploading what they're calling qualification level centre assessed grades onto their system for units that we have completed or units that we may not have been able to have completed, and that process is due to finish in June. So I would anticipate that the overwhelming majority of students that are in an examination year this year will have their endpoint assessment completed with the grades uploaded by the middle of June. There may be some variance in that for students on UAL courses, but overwhelmingly it would be within that framework. I don't know whether there are any other colleagues that want to respond to any questions before we draw this session to a close. No. Okay. My sincerest thanks to every one of you for taking the time to spend this 45-minute hour, I beg your pardon, with us. We will endeavour to answer as many questions that we've been unable to in our response tomorrow. But thank you all very much for spending this time with us, and we very much look to seeing all our students in the college over the course of the next week. And thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.